Hello friends, Mali Panpadith here, CEO of the SOAR Community Network and co-founder of the SOAR Community Nebula. We are highlighting 1,000 champions of change and community builders, and we're delighted to bring to you today Matt Hugg. Thank you so much, Matt, for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is really great.
Awesome. Well, can you let us know who you are, reintroduce yourself to our community, where you're hailing from today, calling from, and
Sure.
what you're currently doing in the world?
Well, my name, Matthew Hugg. I am right now in beautiful Lansdale, Pennsylvania, which is a nice suburban town outside of Philadelphia. And what do I do in the world? Well, I host a website called Nonprofit.Courses. And .courses is one of these new top-level domains, like .com and .org, but just .courses. And what I do is have literally hundreds of courses, whether it's 2 minutes, 2 hours, for nonprofits on a wide variety of fields. From fundraising and accounting and HR and I don't know, all sorts of things. So they're all nonprofit focused. About 3/4 of them right now are free. That will always stay at about 50%. And it's just to serve the nonprofit community and for instruction. That's kind of what I do.
That's great. Well, as we move along into the interview, we definitely want to learn more about why you chose this path and why nonprofits are so important to your nonprofit leaders.
Sure.
So the next question I have for you, Matt, is in your life, have you experienced just more love and compassion and kindness? And maybe perhaps it's an experience you want to share, a person or people that you would like to highlight that's helped you to become this person that you are today, or shifted maybe a way of thinking so profoundly that you want to recognize them?
Yeah, it's interesting, all these questions, because, we talk a little bit about ahead of time, I have to confess, I kind of struggled with a little bit because I just haven't been in that mode lately to be reflective that way. But, it really crossed my mind that my friend and pastor and mentor for such a long time, a fellow named Dick Schreckheis, who currently lives in Virginia, in the Piedmont, is really, Dick kind of brought us, my wife and I, back into a place that we really found helpful. Spiritually, but then also in terms of community, and Dick's struggling right now with his own health issues, as we all tend to do as we get to a certain age, and he really was somebody who, it's funny. I'm not even sure I can point out like a specific instance so much, but just connecting with him and how settled he is, and I don't know, empathetic. It's just, yeah. So, Dick Schreckheis.
Wow, that's great. I love that we have people in our lives that really stand out and have made such a huge difference. So, thank you,
Yeah.
Dick, for making a huge difference in Matt's life.
Well, it's funny. I think Dick, and I think a lot of people would agree, is probably the person as close to Jesus as you might find among us here. He really. He wasn't like a demonstrative, he didn't kind of run out and beat you over the head with things. He took a different path, and that was huge.
When you think of community builders and change agents, people who are similar to Dick and perhaps others that you've seen and witnessed, do you want to highlight any attributes or consistent themes that come to mind in terms of how they operate, who they are?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the popular concept of these kinds of people you're talking about are really extroverts. They're the ones who go out and have some charisma that that they'll stand on stage and that kind of thing. And I find that largely a mythology. There are people who have empathy, who work behind the scenes, who don't care who gets the credit, or as I had a boss years ago said, a good idea doesn't care who has it. And And it's true. But these people who are really the true change agents are the ones who approach it that way, where they don't they're not necessarily out for themselves. They're out to do good for other people, and eventually it might reflect back to them. But it's clear that it's not like they're waving the flag saying, "Hey, look at me." And so, yeah, that's where I find people who are able to make the most change. And unfortunately, we don't see them a lot because of that popular cultural myth. Okay, so I read something a while ago that really rang true to me. So it has to do. I'm kind of a history buff guy. I really like these things, right? And it was a description of American culture, and I think maybe in some parts world culture, through an agrarian time, and then when we flipped to manufacturing and industrialization. And one of the things that came out was that in an agrarian existence, most people lived in small towns or communities that were remote. So you really got to know somebody's character over a long period of time. And you knew whether they worked this way or that way or whatever. When we flipped into industrialization and we started concentrating people and labor and all this, everything was new to each other. And we still see this today. And people started living not on character, but on personality. And so we started to look at these big demonstrative personalities as something we wanted, as opposed to being able to step back and see character. And it really, I think it has consequences. It has had consequences over the last at least 50 years, if not century, even as how we elect our government officials and how we see other people around us in our communities. And are we looking for personality, or are we looking for character? And short-term, long-term, and how that plays out.
I love that. I love that you shared that, because I feel many times, even in this interview series, when I've asked people that I absolutely know are creating ripple effects and changes in the world, and they're a little bit more introverted, or they say things like, no, I just want to be behind the scenes. And it's truly neat for you to recognize and share with us today that, yes, not every community builder and change agent you even know exists.
Yeah.
They're not out there, putting their hands up and saying, hey, I'm doing this. They're the ones who say, no, I don't want credit for it. I really don't want you to put me out there. Don't put my pictures out there. So there's a whole bunch of people that may never come on this interview series, but they're really changing the world as well. So shout out to them right now as well.
Exactly. Well, there's a book out there. I mean, I come from a charitable gift fundraising background, and so I've done a lot of reading. I have a degree in it. And one of the things, there's a book out there called The 7 Faces of Philanthropy by Prince and Fila. And what they talk about why people give is actually one of the first systematic studies about why people are philanthropists. And it's amazing to see a lot of these, like you say, a lot of folks aren't in it for the recognition. They're not in it for the tax benefits either. In fact, most people aren't. They're in it for dedication to the mission that they love. That's really the thread behind so much. Now, they might take advantage of the taxes and they might get recognized, but that's probably not their first intent or purpose.
Well, speaking of missions that people love and that you love, are there any causes, movements, grassroots initiatives, perhaps even dive deeper into the work that you're doing, that you're utilizing your gifts, your talents, experiences to help advance forward?
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I grew up in a doing environmental education work in high schow for a local park that is not so far from here, and I have to say, that some of what do folks say? There's rarely anything new under the sun. I think there's, it's kind of a biblical verse somewhere, but that the environment. There were people who were concerned about the environment even back in the 1970s, and kind of like pointed these things out. But regardless, Yeah, I mean, I think environmentalism is huge. I mean, it's a big thing today for obvious survival reasons. But I know for myself, I benefit from green space. I mean, we love to go camping and get out. We have our little teardrop trailer and all that we get out with. But there's just something different about being outside. So yeah, I'm certainly empathetic to environmental causes. Also, I'll tell you the thing that really, maybe it sounds a little self-interested, but it's not trying to be, is that since I have been in business for myself, and I come from a small business family, I guess. So I have seen how people see other people who are in business or are trying to do kind of go their own path one way or another. And I've gotten involved with organizations that help folks like that. I've done writing. I wrote a book on helping people to set up consulting and all that. And it's not, believe me, not for the money, but as much because people were coming to me and I wanted to kind of share this information out there and get it out there for people. So I think that's really important. I think about one time I taught a class in marketing for nonprofits at University of Pennsylvania, and I remember bringing up kind of talking about why people go into business and all this. And one of my students was he couldn't conceive of business other than a big corporation. That was kind of like his paradigm of what business was all about. And I said, most people get in the business, they get in the business for a lot of reasons, but their primary objective is to eat, is to pay the bills, is to do the things they're doing, because most businesses, we say corporations, aren't for, don't employ thousands of people. And they're just people trying to make their path in a way that feels good to them, for whatever reason that they decided to do it on their own. So they can pay their bills, so they can go out and enjoy the things that other people enjoy. And there's a lot of struggle behind that. My dad had a pharmacy for years, and he got out of it because he was totally beat up by big, the Rite Aids and all that of the world. And yet people came in and thought, oh, you must have a lot of money, right? And believe me, that was far from the case. In fact, I'd say what he was pulling out of that store was minimal. It really was a problem. And so I've gotten involved with organizations that help people with that, and I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
That's great. That's great. Well, we need it for sure. Entrepreneurship and business ownership it seems sexy and it seems cool when you see it out there and people are talking about it, but when you live it, it's a roller coaster ride for sure. It's very rewarding. It's worth it. At the same time, it is tumultuous. So I think you have to have an understanding of that when you come in and decide that you're going to move in this direction as well. So I think the honest feedback that they get, the training, the pitfalls to look out for, that's very important to prepare them for this amazing and wonderful ride.
Well, it's funny. It's a lot like, getting to nonprofits, right? Which is kind of the world I work in, is that people think it's about the mission. And it is. It's largely about the mission. But if you're running one, unless you're one of the program people or something, mission is like this much. And not because you don't want it to be, but because there's all those other things that go along with the mission. If you have anybody there, it's like I push back when people say, "Oh, you have to run it like a business." Well, like a business, but nonprofits aren't businesses. You have to meet payroll, and you have to, you can't pay your utility bill on volunteer labor, right? But small businesses and nonprofits have a lot of similar attributes in that the person has a mission to accomplish, whatever that is. And it's more than just bringing in the money. It's doing whatever they love to do. and but they have to struggle with all those other parts of it to really make it work.
Right. Well, talking about struggles and making things work, when you have gone through some challenges and difficult times, as we all have, is there a quote, a scripture, a philosophy or motto that you follow that really helps you to ground yourself and get back to center and move forward?
Yeah, it's funny, especially as I deal with other people, I have to remind myself of this a lot, is what's past is prologue. Is Shakespeare, The Tempest, which, by the way, I had to look up before I came on here, right? Don't think I'm a Shakespeare nerd here, right? But no, it is huge. I mean, again, like I said, I like reading history. I think there are a lot of lessons, there are a lot of things, struggles that we're going through today as a culture and society that none of this is new. I mean, you know, we all had this. We can learn a lot from our predecessors, and believe me, we're not any brighter than them. but really, where people come from and how they got to the place they got explains us so much about their current behavior. You know, nobody just kind of showed up in front of them. Nobody showed up in their car in that instance to move across you quickly to, you know, I mean, okay, this is a silly example, and I've spoken to you about this before, right? About my experience at the shopping mall with the other driver, right? And I said, and you know, might personally have some some insight into this, but for the rest of it, folks, so I was driving in. I did some teaching in Cambodia, and and if you don't know, and you know, you do, right? The driving there is just nutso for what I'm used to. I mean, I let other people stick behind the wheel because it just wasn't going to be me. And so I come back right not long after that, and I'm kind of coming around those, you know, malls have like those circle things that go around them, and I move over in the lane, and I just before looked in my rearview mirror, and there was a car back a couple lengths, and then I hear this really honk horn behind me, and I was like, what is going on? That guy was not that close, and I see this other car dash in right behind me. And wow, what's going on? Until I saw the little flag on his mirror, it says Kingdom of Cambodia. And it all like, oh yeah, he's driving like back there, right?
Wow.
I mean, you know, and it's not to say one way or the other about how people drive or anything like that, right? But he had a past that brought him to that mall, that taught him how to drive like that. To him, that was perfectly normal. That's just what people do. And the other person behind, now him, was behind me, had no context to that and got angry about it. And so what's past is going to tell us how this person might behave now in the future, insofar as his driving is concerned.
I think that's really a great quote or a great concept, because we do forget that we are made up of all the little moments that add up to this particular one that we have, that you and I are having right now. I'm shaping my experience with you right now based on all of the other stories that I've collected along the way. You know, I might say this is an awesome interview. I might say this interview sucks, depending on all the.
Well, and you know, kind of attached to that is that we all suffer from the sins of our predecessors. So you will say this was, you know, this interview sucks, right? Because the last person was outstanding, and I just didn't meet that standard. I mean, you know, whatever it is, right? It's just that whatever we do, you know, we might actually accomplish stuff, but we get judged not on, a lot of times, on our own merits, but on how other people behaved,
Right.
and how we're being compared to that.
That's right. Well, we're coming to the close of this interview, so I have one final question, which is, what would a better world look like through your eyes?
Oh my goodness. You know, it's funny because we talk when I teach in fundraising and in nonprofit management, or you know, we talk about this in the nonprofit world. It's the vision statement, right? And the vision statement is what would the world look like if your mission was accomplished? Mm-hmm. If nobody needed what you did anymore, what would the world be like? And, professionally, it would be like people are getting the information they need, and that folks are like responding to their need in the nonprofit instead of having to go out and do stuff, right? And that's great, I think. But really broadly, I'll tell you that the better world would just look plain more empathetic. I think that people would in effect feel the pain of other people and be able to connect with them based on where that other person is, and kind of step out of themselves a little more. When we're talking, one of the best things that we talk about in fundraising sometimes is one-to-one for one. Right? When you ask somebody, one-to-one for me, if I'm asking you for a gift, for personally, right, that's begging. One-to-one for that other person that we're trying to help is fundraising. And you're asking philanthropy as opposed to charity, which would be for yourself. And I think being able to be empathetic with that other person and partner with other people on how to help each other, it would make for a much better world, regardless of where we go environmentally, and believe me, I want to see that turnaround, and other issues. But I think just having increasing that empathy quotient would be huge.
Well, Matt, how can our community support you, and how can we find out more information about you and your work?
Well, go to Nonprofit.Courses. I hope support me by clicking early and often, as I tell folks. But support yourself by going and finding some things that really help them. Help you in terms of how to move your own cause and mission forward. I mean, that's what the website's all about. People ask, how do you make money on it? It's going to be advertising and all that. But which is why I tell people click early and often, because the more click throughs, you can actually get advertising for it. But no, I think that Nonprofit.Courses, and pop me a note through the website if you see anything you don't, or excuse me, let's flip that. If you don't see things that you do want, that's huge, because I want to put material out there that people really are thirsty for, so that they can accomplish their goals.
That's great. Well, thank you so very much for your time today, Matt, and for the opportunity to be with you and have you share more about your passions, about what makes you a champion for change, and also the work that you're doing with the website and the online portal, so that we can all kind of elevate our knowledge and our wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here. This has been great.
Appreciate it so much. For those that are watching, please remember to nominate yourself or someone in your community who's making a huge difference. We'd love to feature you. We'd love to hear your insights so you can inspire and empower the world with your message. Please visit us at nebula.soarcommunitynetwork.com. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.